1978's Superman is a perfect comic book movie. Now, I want to specify that it's a perfect comic book movie and not a perfect movie. There really is no perfect movie except for Scooby-Doo 2, but we're not ready for that conversation yet. No, I believe Superman is a perfect comic book movie, and I'm gonna prove it with these criteria. Number 1, characters are accurate representations of their comic book counterparts. This one is obvious, but also important. If both the character writing and casting are spot on, you will almost always have a good comic book movie. For as flawed as the Fantastic Four movies are, they are good examples of this. Each of the 4 main characters have great casting and great writing. For all intents and purposes, this is the Fantastic Four ripped right out of the comics. But on the flip side, Fan4stick does a really bad job with this. The actors do their best, but the writing is so bad that not a single one of these characters feels like who they're supposed to be. They gave the thing a confirmed kill count. What was this movie on? Number 2, uses special effects and filmmaking techniques to translate comic book panels into film. This one is pretty simple. Good special effects and good directing. Something like, I don't know, The Batman. Number 3, a threatening villain that drives the plot. This point is probably the most up for interpretation. There's a bunch of different types of villains, but it's important for the villain to have some relevance in the movie. Thanos is the primary plot driver of Infinity War. The Scarlet Witch is incredibly threatening in Multiverse of Madness. These are great villains that really help their respective movies. And then there's Jessica Chastain in Dark Phoenix. Do you remember anything about her character? Me neither. Who are you people? Number 4, has the tone and spirit of the comic characters and stories the movie is adapting. This one is crucial. It's important for a comic book adaptation to truly embody the spirit of the comics. The Old Man Logan comics are very dark and depressing. Thus, Logan is a dark and depressing movie that is considered one of the best films in modern times. The Thor God Butcher story arc is dark and serious, but Thor Love and Thunder is a wacky, zany comedy movie that failed in about every way. So, with this list laid out, I'm gonna go through Superman the movie and prove that it meets each one of these points and is a perfect comic book movie. The movie begins with news propaganda. A young boy flips through a comic book and explains how the Daily Planet has become a symbol of hope for the people of Metropolis. I don't entirely understand this insert. The Daily Planet is mostly just a setting in this movie. It doesn't have a lot of narrative relevance, but whatever. We pan up to the sky for the opening credits. And these are some of the best credits in any movie ever, both because of the cool neon effects and John Williams' music. Yes! Oh, this is the best movie ever made. We travel through the cosmos and land on Krypton. There, Jor-El is trying General Zod and his goons. Zod is all like, "Join me and we will take over Krypton." And Jor-El is all like, "El Bozo." That's stupid. And he sends them to the Phantom Zone. I will say though, it's a bit strange that they did Zod's origin in this movie instead of saving it for Superman 2. But anyway, Jor-El has a meeting with the Kryptonian High Council, and wow, those are some bright costumes. I don't even know how they achieved that effect, but it looks cool. Jor-El tries to warn the council about the coming destruction of Krypton, but they don't believe him because they're a bunch of and they force him to stay on the planet and to not warn anyone else. Jor-El technically obeys their wishes and prepares to send Kal-El to Earth. He sends his son away with Kryptonian knowledge and a farewell that really tugs on the heartstrings. For how little he cares, it's surprising how good of an actor Marlon Brando is. And pair that with the John Williams music and man, do you have a good scene.
All I can send you. Kal-El.
I'm not getting teary-eyed, man. What the? This is supposed to be a Superman movie. What the hell? As Kal-El's pod raises up and leaves the planet, Krypton explodes. Baby Superman is now flying through space as Jor-El's AI voice is teaching him stuff. For now the day bleeds into nightfall. As John and Martha Kent are driving, the pod lands in a nearby field. The couple investigate and find a baby. Our baby's here. Why does it look like your boss? And yeah, that baby is all kinds of naked, just letting it all hang out. John starts changing the tire when Martha warns him.
You take things easy now, Jonathan. Remember what Doc Fry said about that heart of yours.
Oh, please. I'm not gonna die from a heart attack. The truck almost falls on him, but baby Superman catches it. Dang, that is one strong baby. I bet one day he's gonna play football. Oh man. Yeah, he's the team's water boy. Lana Luthor walks over and asks him to hang out with her and her friends. But before Clark can respond, a jock walks over and is all like, "Come on, babe. Let's go and do nothing because it's the 1950s and we live in the middle of nowhere." They drive off and Clark starts feeling some of that teen angst. And he kicks his football really far. Clark decides to test his abilities even more by racing the bullies home. He's running alongside this train and this looks so cool. His running method is a little wacky, but still cool. He beats the other kids home and they call him a freak for being fast, cause yeah, that makes sense. "Don't look now, bro. There's a monster behind you." They drive off and Clark and his dad have a talk. Clark is frustrated that he can't be open with his powers and what he can do, but John says that he has to remain hidden because they're still not sure why Clark was sent to Earth. Wow, what a nice final talk with his son. Wait, why does my script say final talk? Why is the movie still playing? Why is he grabbing his arm like that? He said he was fine. No, no. John Kent's death in this movie is very sad, and a lot less goofy than his death in other movies. After the funeral, Clark wakes up to some strange noises he hears. "If you build it, he will come." Little Kevin Costner joke for you. Clark isn't actually hearing a reference to one of my all-time favorite movies. He hears a noise coming from the barn. Inside is a pod he landed in and a mysterious green crystal. The next morning, Clark is standing in a field and contemplating his future. It's time for Clark to find out his purpose, why he was sent to Earth. And this is so filmatic. I think at this point we can cross off one of the points on our list. Number 2, uses special effects and filmmaking techniques to translate comic book panels into film. Even before we get to all the superhero actiony goodness, this movie has some really good effects and great directing. The train scene I mentioned looks phenomenal. The sets and costumes at Krypton look like a whole different planet, and I adore how Richard Donner directed this simple scene in the field. And I don't know how to describe it, but it almost feels like there's a softness to the look of this movie that kind of reminds me of old comic book art. I don't know, maybe it's just the specific transfer of this movie, or maybe I'm crazy, but there might be something there. We transition to the Arctic, where Clark finds a nice open area of ice. He chucks that crystal and the Fortress of Solitude begins to form. After wandering inside, he fiddles around with some crystals and the projection of Jor-El appears. The AI explains who Jor-El was, what Krypton was, and what Clark's purpose on Earth is. He's here to be a protector, a hero, a beacon of hope. And after many years go by, we finally meet Superman. This is incredible. Man, every time I watch this movie, I feel like a kid again. We cut to the Daily Planet where we meet Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane. She's rushing out an article for the paper, and as they walk into Perry White's office, we meet Clark Kent, who's now an adult. And this movie perfectly nails Clark Kent. He's dorky, he's awkward, and you can really believe how people don't notice he's Superman. And Christopher Reeve's performance lends to a lot of great comedic moments. Like when he's pretending he can't open the bottle and it sprays all over him. Comedy gold. After work, Clark walks Lois home, and these scenes are fun. Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder have a lot of great chemistry with each other, and just in general, I think Margot Kidder is great as Lois Lane. She's full of personality and charisma. She adds some comedy when necessary, and she's great in the more emotional scenes. I would go as far as to say that she's the best Lois Lane we've ever had. While they're walking, Clark and Lois are attacked by a mugger. He leads them into the alleyway, and look at this man. Clark is so unserious.
I realized, of course, that times are tough.
He pointed the gun away.
You can't solve
When Lois retaliates, the gunman fires, but Clark catches the bullet before anyone could get hurt. The mugger runs away as Lois checks on Clark, and he passed out. What a wuss. But really, this scene just adds to the comedy of Clark pretending he's not the most powerful person alive. We cut away to Otis, a big dumb dope who's walking around the street and is being tailed by detectives. He attempts to steal a pretzel from a blind bodega owner, but this good boy stops him. Otis eventually wanders through the train station where I happen to notice a very interesting extra. This guy's walking with so much swag, and I didn't just notice him the one time. Oh, he's there in that shot too. That's a bad use of extras. There he is again. The detective spots the target walking behind the train and follows. Otis is goofing off, but hides in a safety hole as the train rolls by. The hole opens up and leads to a secret base. While inside, it's revealed that a mystery man is watching the detective. He tries to enter the base, but The mystery man cannot allow that. He slowly pushes the safety hole out, sending the detective onto the railroad tracks in front of a speeding train. Backup arrives and finds the detective, or maybe just his hat. It seems like they're really focusing on the hat and not the mutilated corpse that should still be on the tracks. We meet the man behind the murder, and he is the notorious Lex Luthor, played by Gene Hackman. He prides himself on being the greatest criminal mind of the modern times, and we get to see a glimpse of his latest evil scheme. We cut back to the Daily Planet, where Lois is getting ready to cover a story from a news chopper. And we get another funny scene where Clark is trying to go down the elevator, but the poor guy just can't. Up on the roof, the helicopter starts to take off when something goes awry. A cable comes loose, snags the landing gear, and sends the helicopter over the edge. The pilot is knocked out and Lois is hanging on for dear life as a crowd forms down below, and there's only one person who can save her. Clark changes in the phone booth and takes off. Lois loses her grip and falls, but before she hits the street, Superman sweeps in and catches her with one of the all-time funniest interactions in any superhero movie ever.
Easy, miss. I've got you.
You've got me! Who's got you?
He flies up to the roof, catching the helicopter on the way up, and this is incredible. I know I already checked off this point, but the effects in this movie are amazing. This was before CGI was super popular, and these practical effects are genuinely mind-blowing. Incredible. He drops her off, then flies away to stop more crimes. He stops a guy from climbing up a building Mission Impossible style. He stops a boat heist by dropping off the boat in front of the police station. And of course, he makes time for smaller problems, helping a young girl's cat out of a tree. Apparently this is somehow controversial. I don't know, man. Twitter makes no sense sometimes. But I think this is perfectly in line with Superman. He's not above doing these small acts of good for people. But not to worry, Superman is still there for when big problems arise. We cut to Air Force One, which just lost one of its engines. The plane is going down and the crew is panicking, trying to find a way to save the president who is on board. And just a random fun fact, the president at the time was Jimmy Carter. So there's that info. Superman comes to the rescue, serving as the plane's missing engine. He saves the crew and the president as these bystanders watch the news reports on him. We cut away to Lex and his goons who are having an underground beach day. Lex has taken notice of Superman and is beginning to feel threatened by the new heroic presence in Metropolis. And as he's getting out of the pool, Otis goes in to give him his robe. He's getting his socks so wet. Transition to the Daily Planet and they're having a meeting. Perry White wants his top journalist to get all the details on Superman, and when answering a question about Superman, Clark almost blows his cover.
Exactly how would you know that, Kent?
Now that I get a good look at him, he kinda looks like Superman. Lois is planning to be the one to break this case as Clark slips her a cutesy little note. We cut to later that night on Lois Lane's balcony, and as she begins to think he won't show up, Superman arrives for an interview. And I talked about Christopher Reeve's great performance as Clark Kent, but his performance as Superman is even better. There has never been, nor do I think there will ever be, a better Superman than Christopher Reeve. He embodies the character so perfectly. He's charming and likable, but also very heroic. And he gets to show off a lot of range in these movies, from these funny, flirty scenes with Lois to his more rage-filled, emotional scenes later in the movie. A lot of people will try to say he's a bad Superman because he's too skinny, which is just not true. Sure, he's not the bulkiest Superman we've had, but he's a big guy. He's 6'4" and he put on a lot of weight for this role. And in my head, when I think of Superman, my mind always goes immediately to Christopher Reeve.
Fab Five Freddy told me everybody's fly.
So between Superman, Lois, and other side characters like Perry White and Jimmy Olsen, I think we can check off another point on our list. Number one, the characters are accurate representations of their comic book counterparts, because these versions of these characters are forever timeless. Lois asks him questions about where he came from and what his powers are. He happens to mention that his X-ray vision will let him see through lead. Really hope that doesn't come back in any negative way. Towards the end of the interview, Superman takes Lois for a fly around the city. And this is pretty much a whole new world before a whole new world ever happened. And again, I'm astonished at how good this movie looks almost 50 years later. It's so fun watching them soar through the sky, above the clouds, and around the Statue of Liberty. Wait, what? Did Metropolis always have the Statue of Liberty? Huh. You learn something new every day. They fly Peter and Wendy style when Lois loses her grip and falls. Wow, hopefully she doesn't fall. Oh, would you look at that? Superman catches her and flies her back home, ending their night together, but starting their romance. He flies off and she is absolutely smitten. Superman pulls a U-turn and shows up to her door as Clark Kent, and he's gonna take her out on their date. I will say the romance side plot isn't all that great in this movie. They try to do a romance for both Clark and Lois as well as Superman and Lois, and I really don't care for it. It feels like it muddies the waters of what could be a really well-written romance story, but it gets resolved in Superman 2, so whatever. I will say though, this scene single-handedly proves that the Clark Kent disguise works. I mean, look at that. That man is acting. That's incredible. We cut away to Lex Luthor and his crew who are reading Lois's interview with Superman. They discuss his powers and what he can do, and Lex thinks of a way to stop him and begins to enact his evil scheme. On the highway, Lex Luthor flips over his remote control car. Yo, he's got a Tesla. And it drives like a Tesla. And as the military convoy drives by, they find his goon laying there, pretending to be unconscious from the crash. The men get out of their vehicles to apply aid. There's a very poorly aged joke here where the captain is creepy and demands his troops to look away while he does CPR. And yeah, this is weird. Why is this in a Superman movie? But while the military is distracted, Otis climbs aboard the missile carrier and fiddles with the controls. He gets away as Lex Luthor picks him up, but while in the getaway vehicle, it's revealed that Otis messed up the calibrations, because of course he did. So Lex Luthor enacts Plan B. He stops the convoy with a big rig of his own, and while he's distracting the military, Miss Tessmacher climbs the side of the bridge and onto the truck. Inside, she successfully changes the missile controls, and we cut away to the West Coast. Damn. Jimmy Olsen is taking pictures of this dam, and Lois Lane is doing an interview while driving, which is insane.
I mean, you don't even know his name. Oh, yeah.
Back at the planet, Clark is talking to Perry when he hears a very high-pitched frequency. Lex Luthor communicates with him using this specific frequency. He tells Clark about a gas he plans on releasing on Metropolis, which would kill half the city's population. So Superman follows the signal, yeeting himself out of the building and magically changing his clothes. Little strange, but I'll allow it. Superman scours the city and drills into the underground. There he finds Lex Luthor's base, breaking the door down with ease. Now that they're meeting face to face, Lex unveils his master plan. The rockets he messed with launch and are heading to two different points on the map. One is headed to the east coast, but the other one is headed to the San Andreas Fault. Lex bought a bunch of land on the other side of the fault, and when the missile strikes, the entire west coast will sink into the ocean, driving up the value of the land he owns, making him rich. He's gonna activate the San Andreas Fault? There's only one man who can stop him. He lets it slip that the only way to stop the rockets is his detonator, but when questioned, he doesn't give it up. So Superman uses his X-ray vision to find it, noticing a lead box. Oh no, he can't see through the box. This could be a trap. If only Superman didn't let his weaknesses be published in the newspaper. He opens the box and is greeted with a big dose of kryptonite. Lex Luthor has officially bested Superman, and I think we can cross off another point on our list. Number 3. A threatening villain that drives the plot. Now, Lex Luthor doesn't really drive the plot too much, but he is an active threat who completely outsmarts our hero. Superman is completely at Lex's mercy, and this adaptation of Lex is great. He's arrogant, he's bombastic, and I think Gene Hackman plays the character very well. Lex delivers a big evil monologue, places the kryptonite chain around Superman's neck, and yeets him into the pool. He turns down all the lights and retreats to his office to reap the rewards of his evil plot. While in the pool, Superman struggles to free himself from the chain, but when Miss Tessmacher shows up, he begs and pleads for her to free him, not for his own life, but so he can save the lives of others. She agrees, so long as he takes care of the rocket headed for the East Coast first, because that's where her mother lives. He thanks her and takes off. This scene is really great at building tension. We cut away to the different characters who are in danger and the military who are tracking the two missiles. And for as fast as Superman is, he's struggling to keep up with this rocket. He eventually does though, and flies it up to space. And once that missile safely explodes, the second rocket has hit the San Andreas Fault, and Superman goes to do damage control. The earthquake starts avalanches and breaks apart the Golden Gate Bridge, but Superman manages to fix the fault. Not gonna question the science on that one. And he flies off to help people in peril. He catches a school bus about to fall off the Golden Gate Bridge, and he stops a train from derailing by becoming the track. Something I really like about this movie is that its climax isn't a huge drag out fight between the main hero and the main villain. The climax is instead the hero saving people. It's simple, but it works really well. Jimmy finds himself in trouble, hanging on for dear life, and of course Superman flies over and saves him. Although I imagine the scene would be different if another Jimmy was in danger. I'm gonna spend the next 50 hours hanging off the side of this cliff for $100 million. He sets Jimmy down, that goes looking for Lois, who is in grave danger. A crack opens up in the road, swallowing her car. As Superman searches in the sky, she's being buried alive by rubble. He finds her and pulls the car out of the crevice, but it's too late. He gently removes her from the vehicle, and she's dead. He sets her on the ground and just sits there for a moment. But when the anger and pain becomes too much, he lets out a scream. Oh, everyone on Earth heard that. I've said it a million times already, but Christopher Reeve really is fantastic in this movie. You can physically feel the pain in that scream. He flies up into space and decides he's not gonna let her go. He's gonna save her. He famously spins the world in the opposite direction, turning back time. Yeah, this is really goofy, doesn't make very much sense, but it's iconic. It's something that will always only happen in this movie. He flies back down to Earth and saves Lois before she dies. The movie doesn't really explain the extent of his time travel though. Did he undo all the people he saved? Did he undo the missile hitting the fault? Is there another Superman out there saving people who will disappear when he goes back in time? I have a lot of questions, and the movie answers none of them. Lois and Clark talk with one another, and she has no idea of the danger she avoided. And as the two are about to kiss, Jimmy shows up and kills the moment. Superman says, "Okay, I gotta go. See you guys in the sequel," and flies off. Later that night, he drops Lex Luthor and Otis off at prison. This isn't how the legal system works. You can't send them straight to prison. They have to be tried first. Lex reveals his iconic, shiny, bald head and proclaims himself the greatest criminal mind, or whatever. Superman flies off into space one last time, and the credits roll. But we are not finished yet. We still have 1 point left on our list. Number 4 has the tone and spirit of the comic characters and stories the movie is adapting. And I think the movie clears this point with flying colors. The movie feels like old Superman comics. There's genuine danger and moments with high stakes. But overall, the movie is very cheerful, optimistic, and has that underlying feeling of hope, which is perfect for the character of Superman. So we're gonna cross that off the list, and there we have it. Superman is a perfect comic book movie by these standards. Now, I'm not the end-all be-all of comic book movies. I'm sure a lot of people have their own interpretation of a perfect comic book movie that's different than mine. So let me know what you would consider to be a perfect comic book movie, or click on this video here to watch my ranking of the DCEU movies. There's definitely 1 or 2 perfect comic book movies in there. So yeah, click on it. It's a good one, I promise.